Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to this project management workshop. My name is Javier Aldape Perez, and we are going to learn some of the most common project management techniques. I am referring to these two. Firstly, the work breakdown structure, and secondly, the Gantt chart. Now, there are many different techniques and approaches for managing projects. However, these ones are the most common used by professionals all over the world, all over different type of industries, in manufacturing, in services, you name it. So we have to start with the basics, and these are the building blocks. And we're going to apply these tools on a real project. Let me show you that one right here. That one that you see here. We are going to prepare a breakfast, but this is a breakfast that is going to be served in bed. Yeah, so we're going to prepare a tray, and in this tray we're going to have a buttered toast, an orange juice, and what else do we have here? A boiled egg. Okay, so let us apply these techniques for this project, because if you understand how to apply these techniques for this project, you can apply it for any other project. The rules remain the same. And we are going to follow some steps. And these are the 5 steps that we are going to follow. Step number 1, we are going to divide and conquer. Yeah, that's how we're going to call it. Divide and conquer. Then step number 2, we are going to define requirements. Step number 3, estimate the duration time for those activities that are required. And number 4, identify constraints or limitations that we might have. Lastly, we're going to identify dependencies. Yeah, activities that depend from other activities. And the opposite, activities that don't depend from other activities. All right, so let us start. All right, so the very first step is to divide and conquer, or divide e impera, as the Romans used to call that. So the idea here is to break down a problem into 2 or more sub-problems of the same or related type, until these become simple enough to be solved directly. So if we want to serve a breakfast in bed, well, we need to break it down into its little pieces, right? We're going to divide and conquer. That means that is our goal, and for that goal, we are going to produce a glass of orange drink. We are going to produce boiled egg in a cup. We are going to produce buttered toast, and we are going to arrange everything on a tray, and we're going to serve that in bed. Yeah. So once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and yes, this is an activity also. Serving the breakfast in bed is an action. So we have 5 different activities. Now, we can still break down these sub-activities. For example, producing a glass of orange drink requires to obtain the juice and obtain the glass. To produce a boiled egg in an egg cup requires to produce that boiled egg, to obtain that egg cup, and in order to produce that boiled egg, we need to boil the water, and we need, of course, to obtain the water. All this requires time and effort, so that's why we have it here. We also need to obtain eggs, because, hey, if you don't have an egg, well, you're going to end up with an egg cup without an egg, right? So everything has to be placed, everything that is in the radar. Now we're going to produce the buttered toast. Same logic, we're going to produce the toast, which of course requires bread. We also need to obtain butter because it's buttered toast. And lastly, we're going to arrange the tray with some plates and cutlery. And yes, we need to have a tray. And once we have that, we can serve it. Yeah, so as you can see here, we divide and conquer. This is the success formula for the Romans. This is how they conquer. Yeah, they divide people and they conquer. All right, so let's move on. The next step is to define types of requirements. Yeah, what does that really mean? Well, sometimes in some projects you might have the situation that we're going to have here. Some activities might require worker time, man hours. Some other activities might require machine time. Machine time? Well, think about that toast. Are you going to toast your bread with your breath? Of course not. You need a machine. Are you going to boil the water with your hands? Of course not. We need also a machine. So some activities require machine time. So once again, we have the breakdown structure. And now you notice I just use different colors because I want to identify what belongs to people activities or worker times and machine time. And that is going to be relevant later on when we create a plan. You're going to see that in just a minute. All right, so the third step is to estimate the time that this will require. Now, here I need to underline the word estimate because remember, we are planning something that is basically the future. We don't know what is going to happen. There is uncertainty, but hey, better to plan than just to move forward without any kind of plan. So we're going to estimate how long it takes to produce a glass of orange, produce a boiled egg, produce buttered toast, and arrange a tray. And it's not that difficult. It's just an estimation. For instance, I just came out with a number, a figure, 1 minute to produce a glass of orange. I think it's fair enough. You know? In 1 minute, you can get the juice and put it inside of a glass. However, that is a different story here because in order to produce a boiled egg, we're going to require 8 minutes. Now, how I came up with this number? Well, I estimated 2 minutes for the boiled egg, 1 minute to obtain the egg cup, 3 minutes to boil the water beforehand, and 1 minute to obtain the water and 1 minute to obtain eggs. Now, let's not get so obsessive here because I'm sure some of you might argue that, hey, I can obtain an egg in 13 seconds because, I don't know, I own some chickens or whatever. Look, we don't go into those details. Of course, I believe you. Maybe you might have other times. These are my times. And I just try to keep it very simple, you know, very well-round numbers. All right, we continue with the same logic, and we have 4 minutes for the buttered toast. And that is 2 minutes for producing the toast and 1 minute for obtaining the bread and 1 minute to obtain the butter. And to arrange the tray, well, I just came up with 1 minute. Yeah. And lastly, let's not forget about serving breakfast in bed, and that is going to be 1 minute. All right, so let's move forward. The fourth step is to define constraints and limitations. And with constraints and limitations, I am referring to limitations such as budget, money, or limitations like know-how or expertise, because, hey, who knows, maybe you just don't know how to do it, or nobody in your team knows how to perform that activity, which means that you need to hire someone. Time. Hey, you have to perform a project, but you cannot exceed a specific time. In my case, for this specific project, I have defined capacity. And capacity means no multitasking. One person can only perform one activity at a time. So, for example, if during a specific time 3 activities are required, I don't know what kind of activities, preparing the orange juice, preparing the boiled egg, and toasting the bread, you know, you have these 3 activities. Well, then you need 3 workers because one person cannot perform all these simultaneously. It's not like an octopus with 8 arms or something like that. So that is what I mean with these constraints. I think it's a very realistic constraint, don't you think? So that is the fourth step. Let's move to the last step, and that is we want to identify dependencies, and that is going to be crucial for optimizing our plan. And we're going to start doing that by drafting the first visual, the first plan of the activities that we have to do. And this is the reason why you see this timeline, that it goes from 0 to 15 minutes, right? And now we have all the sequence of activities, such as producing the glass of orange and the buttered toast and the boiled egg, and arranging the tray, and finally serving that breakfast. We have a layout, a plan already here. And you might notice that these blocks, there's a reason why they have different sizes. I mean, they are linked to this timeline, and there is a duration, and it's not the same to produce a glass of orange drink as to produce a boiled egg. And we have learned that, remember? Because we estimated, we defined the activities which are required, and we estimated the time per activity. And this visual here might help you to remember that. So a toast requires 2 minutes, and in total, to produce a buttered toast, 4 minutes. Yeah. Okay, so now we have a plan, and it looks all fine under the assumption that serving that breakfast is going to be accepted within these 15 minutes. But hey, welcome to the real life. Wake up and smell the coffee. That is not always the case, because customers every time are more demanding. And maybe your friend or your girlfriend or your wife or your husband or your child, or I don't know, might say, hey, 15 minutes is really a long time. Do it faster. Don't panic, no worries. I think you can already see that we can optimize this plan, because a lot of these activities don't have to occur in that sequence. Obviously, we have some dependencies, right? Because we cannot prepare a buttered toast if we don't get the toast first and then we toast it. That is clear. We have a sequence, a dependency. However, it's completely independent from producing a glass of orange juice or arranging a tray. So some of these activities can be performed in parallel. So at this moment, our performance or the metric that we can use is lead time, and that is going to be 15 minutes. Now, lead time, in case you're not familiar with this term, means the elapsed time, how long it takes from the moment you start until you finish all your tasks, and that is 15 minutes. So let's see how we can reduce that lead time, but let's also see what are the consequences of doing that. All right, so we are moving from a sequential to a concurrent plan. And now you see that we have reallocated our activities as to decrease the workload. So what is the effect of this reallocation? Well, first, we notice that the waiting time is way less, to a total of 7 minutes. In terms of requirements of staff, we can already see that, remember that peak that we had? Well, we don't have it anymore. We spread the workload through the time. So to the point that only one person, it is required to do this job. Yeah, so there is even a little break, this person is having here. That is already a very good plan. However, it can be further optimized. Yeah. So now we are thinking a little bit out of the box. And if you have a closer look, what do you think that we can improve? I'm going to give you the answer. So, well, have a look at this toast. We are done with the toast and it is waiting 2 minutes. Is that a big deal? Well, maybe it's not a big deal, but it's not optimal, right? Because that toast is not going to be so nice and warm. It's going to be a little bit cold. So maybe we can improve that by reallocating these activities and without affecting the requirements on staff. And this is the solution. Now you can see we have reaccommodated. We still have some waiting time. In this case, the waiting time increased 1 minute, right? So this is the trade-off. And we haven't sacrificed the workload. We still have 1 minute at the time, one activity at the time. Here there is even a little break and everything fine. So it's just a question of, from the perspective of our customer, what is more important, the time or the quality of the product? In this case, we might define quality in terms of, how hot that, how nice and toasty that food is. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe the quality is related to time, waiting time. So it depends on each case. We might opt for one option or the other. Yeah, so this is how we can further optimize. Is that it? Is that the Gantt chart? I can imagine you probably are asking yourself that question. Well, the answer is yes and no. Let me show you how a Gantt chart might look like in this case. So a Gantt chart is a visual representation of a project schedule. It's very new. It's from 1910 around. And it was developed by, guess what? Henry Gantt. Yeah, hence the name. Now you see that the list of activities remain and also the timeline remained. Now we have a more elegant visual right here. We also have what it is known in industry as the project paths. Yeah, a path or a way is what you see here in blue or in red. Now, why do I have distinguished between these two colors? It has to do with the fact that one out of these three paths is the critical one. The critical path is the one in which if you have a delay in one activity, is going to have an impact to the whole project. Okay? In this particular case, it is clearly the one that you see here, because there is no slack or floating time, or as the Germans call Spielraum. There is no room. You can see that in the other paths, we still have some buffer. We can start right here, or maybe we have a delay and we still have a little bit of a buffer, but not in this one. And that means that in terms of risk management, we want to allocate most of our control resources to that critical path, because that is the bottleneck. Yeah, that the bottleneck is the step that defines the speed for the whole system. That is the principle of the bottleneck. In this case, the critical path is the path that defines the duration for the project. If you have 1 minute of delay here, you will have 1 minute of delay on your whole project. And how to identify the critical path? Well, sometimes it is not as simple as in this little project of preparing a breakfast. There are methods for that. There are also softwares for that. And these are programs, computer programs. For example, Microsoft Project can identify the critical path. Of course, you have to give them the data in terms of the list of activities. You also have to give them the dependencies. Here is called predecessors. You also have to, as an input, provide with the duration of the time that is required. And then the program will display what you see here, this visual. There are many softwares. Here is another one. That is another program called OmniPlan. And some are very user-friendly and some are very complex because they manage different projects simultaneously, projects that affect each other. So imagine a project to install an oil refinery in Saudi Arabia. I mean, these are huge global projects from people working all over the world. Yeah, you have Koreans and Brazilians and Americans and Germans working on little projects which all together interact. So these are very complex projects and they have a very specialized softwares for that. So But is that it? Is project management, is that about Gantt charts and work breakdown and the critical path? Well, not really. There is still a lot to see. Just to show you, and this is really the last element, what you want to ensure is that you achieve your goals, your targets. And one way to do that is by monitoring your performance. And hey, trust is good, but control is better, I've heard once. So imagine that you have a Gantt chart, and now imagine that you can divide all those activities so that you can define percentages as, hey, if we're done with this activity, we're already done with the 30% of our project. And this is what you see here, the percentage of completion. And you can create a plan. You have a target that by a specific time, let's say that this timeline is 1 month. So by the first month, you're done with the 10%. And by the second, you're done with the 20 and 30. And this plan is really, well, is really predictable, it's really linear. So this could be your target, that is your benchmark, yeah? And against that benchmark, you start comparing reality. And maybe reality might look like this, yeah? So in other words, imagine that you create this plan, this line, and now imagine that week after week or month after month or day after day, you start estimating the percentage of completion. And then you start drawing this run chart that you see here. And sometimes at a certain moment in time, you are below your target. This is what we call a problem, by the way, a deviation from an expectation. This is a problem. But then suddenly you catch up, and then you really move ahead, you know? So now in this case, you are really way ahead because you are already 40% of completion, and 40% it is supposed to be done the next month, as you can see on our target. So this is a very simple KPI, key performance indicator, that can help us to take action in case that something wrong is happening. So this is like an alarm system. You can also see it like that. Now we can also use similar ones for tracking expenditures, budget, because we can track the money that we are expending versus the percentage of completion. And just like before, we have a target, and now we have the actual expenditure. And in this case, this blue line above the target is not good news, because we are spending more money than we are supposed to. So at a given moment in time, which is right here, you see that we are in the 30% of completion, we have a deviation of already, what is it? This CV, that is cost variance, is this gap. So that is $1,000. Let's say we are just above the budget. Or in other words, we have expended the money of a 40% of completion. So that is a schedule variance. So it doesn't matter how you see it. These are not good news. So it might be that your boss or your manager might require to continuously report this KPI, yeah? Because we don't want that everything goes south, as they say, and then it's too late to fix it. So we want to quickly identify any potential deviation. That is the whole idea of these metrics. All right. We are done. Okay, not yet done. We still have some homework to do, but no worries. This is a great chance to apply what you have learned. And what you see here is the top view, a layout of some kind of house or flat. Yeah, you see, it looks very nice. I wish I could live here. Look, there is a small kind of terrace, an open kitchen with a living room, a bedroom. Well, this looks more like a single person's apartment. And let us imagine that we need to remodel this place. Yeah, so we need to remodel just 2 rooms. So the bedroom, which is right here, and the office. And remodeling means we need to change the floors, we need to paint the walls, and we also need to to install new electrical installation, because you know we want to have new outlets of power, and maybe you know these fancy lamps that are on the ceiling, I don't know. So we need to install that, and we need to create a plan, because don't tell me that you can do all these simultaneously. No, that is crazy. So you need to have some kind of sequence, but some activities can be performed also in parallel or concurrent. So it's up to you to plan that. Now, of course, we have some constraints. Don't worry, there is no money at this moment, but there is manpower. We only have 3 workers, and I can tell you that in terms of capacity, these workers only work 7 hours a day effectively. Yeah, effectively means that of course they work 8 hours, but 1 hour is just for breaks and, you know, like eating, having a coffee, let's say. So 7 hours a day, 3 workers, and that's all the information you get. That also means that you need to estimate things, all sort of things. Well, let's see how you deal with that and create a plan. Now, how can you create a Gantt chart? You can create a Gantt chart on Excel. You can create a Gantt chart on PowerPoint. You can do it on MS Project if you manage to get that. You might download a software and a program that is, I don't know, looks very interesting. Or you can just do it on the whiteboard. Take a picture. You can also draw it by hand on a big piece of paper. It doesn't really matter, but you're going to present this to your coaches, and your coaches are going to confront you with that as if they are going to be the owner of this flat and you're the contractor, right? So expect questions like, why it takes so long to change that floor? That means that you need to do a little bit of research, but also apply some common sense, yeah? And also defend. You have to learn how to defend your proposal. All right, guys, that's all from my side. I wish you good luck, and thanks once again for listening to this workshop. I hope you enjoy it, and I really hope to see you around. Okay? Take care, and bye-bye.